Okay, so Selena, thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. Before we go ahead and get started, is it all right if I record this video just to have as reference to look back on some notes and touching points that we talked about? It won't get used or published in any sort of official capacity, but is that all right with you?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Um, just to get briefly started, the purpose of this interview is going to talk about the concept of misjudging people, both your what you've experienced and maybe how you've perhaps misjudged people, as well as like where that may stem from and sort of the social construct behind it. But just to go ahead and just briefly get started, do you mind just letting me know how old you are?
I'm 21 years old.
Okay, 21. Okay. So when you think of the concept of misjudgment, what comes to your mind?
When you don't really know a person, and just by the way they're looking, kind of like a stereotype in a way. Let's say their face, they aren't smiling, so you think that they come off mean, or they actually like give you like a side eye look.
Mm-hmm.
You start judging them before you know them.
Okay. And where do you think this sort of social construct stems from?
Um, it's kind of, I don't, it comes from like me personally. Like, can you repeat that question?
Of course. Just the idea of like social construct, and you had mentioned that it's just about like when you first see someone and stereotypes and everything, and just in general, where do you think that comes from a person?
Um,
Perhaps like some cultural background, family backgrounds, or societal, economic.
I would say like family background and society.
Okay, how so?
Um, like with family, let's say like I'm from a Mexican family, and my mom would always be like, let me think of something. She would misjudge a white person for having white privilege,
Okay.
and would be like, oh, they don't have any diversity, like they're not surrounded by anyone with diversity in a
Okay.
way. And so she wouldn't give them the time of day. So like she just misjudges them as like them not being having any
Mm-hmm.
diversity, so they're not open-minded.
Okay. Okay. No, that's fair. So that part, almost a family sort of construct, and I deal with that. Do you think any sort of cultural, there's any sort of cultural impact on misjudging people?
Yes, there is. So like it definitely has to come with like religions too.
Okay.
Um, like certain religions have to be like more covered, you know? So when they see someone wearing less clothing, they're misjudging them as like being provocative in a way,
Okay.
even though that's not who they really are, but what they're wearing is defining them as a person.
Okay. And can you think of maybe any examples of economic sort of misjudgments that come to your mind?
I would have to say like, so in Mankato, I can show you an example from where I'm from. I work at a restaurant, and we have someone that comes in that is well known. He used to own the Timberwolves, and he would walk into the restaurant, and he would just like not be dressed well. We would think like, oh, he could be homeless, but really he is one of the richest people. He's a millionaire.
Okay.
And just by like what their money is not who they are as a person in a way.
Okay. Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, so
Or
people.
like the houses you live in. Like let's say you don't have a huge house, you're seen as like low class.
Okay, so in that sort of sense, do you think stereotypes are sort of involved in this
Yes.
process? And how do you think that sort of impacts the ideal of misjudgments?
Well, I went to a Catholic school, so it was very stereotyped there. Like,
Okay.
you went to a Catholic school, you're expected to have a lot of money because you have to pay tuition.
Okay.
But that's really not the case because a lot of people had financial aid to help them pay out. So they always think, oh, you have daddy's money when you go to a Catholic school.
Okay. So, do you think it's a correct sort of term, or I should say phrase, to say that misjudgments come from stereotypes?
Not fully,
Okay.
I would say. Stereotypes is more like a group, I would say, whereas
Okay.
misjudging is just not fully being aware of what you're judging.
Okay, no, that sounds fair. Good distinction there. When it comes to your experience with misjudgments and misjudging people, being misjudged as well, how do you? I guess I should say, how do you sort of, you in your current life, handle misjudgments? Like today, for example.
With misjudgments, there are like a surrounding, like I'm a college student, people they are judging you 24/7, looking at you. A lot of people come off as unapproachable, so then they would come off as, you'll think, oh, they're not nice, like I would never go up to them, when they just don't want to be like approached at that time, or that's just like how they interact with people, but they don't really mean it, or they're not,
right.
That's their focusing face. At the gym a lot too, an example is a lot of people are very focused into the gym, don't really like to be talked to. So a lot of people are seen as unapproachable, and you would think like, oh, they're not very nice, like they're so full of themselves that they don't talk to anyone else, but
right.
in reality they're just focusing on what they're doing.
Okay.
And that's happened to me before too.
Okay. So it sounds like, from what you just described, misjudging also happens in certain environments. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you think of maybe like an instance where perhaps like a certain environment perhaps wouldn't call for misjudging people, if that makes sense?
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, of course. Can you think of maybe like an example of like an environment? You know, you said the gym on campus, it typically happens to like misjudge a lot of people. Do you think there is perhaps an environment where like no one misjudges someone?
I generally think you're always being watched in a way.
Okay.
Unless you're in an environment where everyone knows who you are as a person.
Okay. So that's almost sort of say like once everyone knows you, perhaps maybe in a friend group, so to say, everyone typically knows you in a friend group.
Or like at home. Yep.
Or at home. Okay. And you're 21. How do you view misjudgments in the world today?
It's just like so common to the point where it doesn't really bother me at this point, because it's kind of a reflection of them as themselves.
Okay.
When someone misjudges you as a person.
Okay.
And when I see people, I don't really dig too deep into that, like, oh, why do they look at me like that? But a lot of people do today think of that and take it very personally.
Okay. So would you say that you're aware of misjudgments that you sort of see today? And like maybe if you're misjudged or you misjudge people, you're sort of aware of that first instance or interaction?
Yes.
Okay.
I am very aware.
Okay. And I know earlier you had mentioned that your mother would sometimes misjudge white people since you're from a Hispanic background. Do you think or how do you think age reflects misjudging people more in the older ages?
With the older ages, that definitely, they misjudge people the most, I would say, just because of how they were raised. There was no diversity back then. So now, today's day, everyone's trying to focus on diversity, and some people try a little too hard, where it's making it worse in a way, where it's becoming more judgmental.
Right.
Where back then, that's just how they grew up. That was just what their beliefs were.
Right. Okay. And since you're the older generation within, or I should say within your family, is from a Hispanic background, how can you sort of assess how misjudgments happen within the Hispanic community? From what you've seen, of course.
From what I see, I would. Oh, this is a hard one.
Yeah, take your time.
You said, like, seeing it in the Hispanic culture, like misjudging?
Right.
Okay.
Or I can say, like, what are a lot of traditions that happen, or sort of scenarios where a lot of maybe Hispanic people may come together, if that helps guide your thought process.
Oh, okay. Like, our family gets together for quinceañeras, weddings. That would also, with traditions like weddings, my mom, she did half English, half Spanish.
Okay.
Whereas the quinceañera, I didn't have one, which was kind of like I was misjudged for that in a way.
How so?
Like, my mom was like, "Why don't you want one? Like, are you like embarrassed?" That's all I really know for that one.
No, of course. Now, I know that the Hispanic culture really tends to be a lot more family oriented, a lot more grounded in their beliefs with everything. And I know earlier you had said religion tends to play a factor in misjudging people. How do you think the Hispanic religion, which is more Catholic, and you yourself went to a Catholic school, how do you think the religion plays a part in misjudging people?
Oh, that is a very big one. My grandma was very, very strict with, like, birth control. She had all daughters, and so she never allowed the kids to get on birth control. And my mom got pregnant, and she was very, very angry at my mom, where I believe she kicked her out.
Okay.
She didn't want really anything to do with it. My mom tried to get on birth control. She wouldn't allow it, and then she kind of misjudged my mom in a way. It was like, "Oh, are you, like, messing around too much? Why would you do that? Why would you want to go on it?" And especially if you don't go to church on the regular, for Hispanics, that's not a good look for them. They're very heavy on church, holidays, Christmas, getting together as a family.
Okay. And today, do you think, I know you were saying that this is a little bit in the older generations with your grandmother and mother. Today, how do you think that has changed, or if it has changed?
Oh, it's changed a lot with how everything is nowadays. My grandma is more open-minded than she was before, and I'll just say my whole family is very open-minded because of how many traditional views have changed throughout the years.
Okay. And when we talk about sort of misjudging people, we've briefly talked about religion and cultural factors within it. Within your experience, how has monetary reflections impacted the misjudgments in your life?
Monetary reflection?
Yes, like You had mentioned earlier people who live in bigger, expensive houses are usually, perceived as wealthier or compared to maybe someone
Right.
with everything. So within your own experience, how has perhaps money impacted how people misjudge you?
Um, as I said, like, I was misjudged. Like, they thought I would have the nicest car, the nicest house for going to a Catholic school. But I was raised in a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of friends were like, oh, like, can you, like, afford going to a Catholic school? How can you do this? How can you do that? We moved around a lot, and people thought I was poor because we also got financial aid.
Uh-huh.
But my parents, they have money. They just spent it on things that were important for the kids. But we were just misjudged as poor because we lived in a trailer court.
Uh-huh. And how did that change till about now as you're 21?
Now that I'm 21, a lot of people I'm around don't focus on where you live, what kind of clothes you're wearing, what kind of car you drive.
Mm-hmm.
People, like the people I'm around, but there's still people there like, oh, they're wearing like an off-brand, like that's poor, like you're poor.
So what are some things that people misjudge you about today? I know you had mentioned gym aspect, but
I would have to say a lot of people misjudge me for being closed-minded, and not really approachable in general.
Okay.
I'm very much a person that I am not who I am until I get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very closed off until I slowly meet a person.
Okay.
So then people always think I'm mean, too good for them. But in reality, I'm just trying to get to know them before they get to know me.
Okay. And when these sort of misjudgments happen, how do they tend to sort of make you feel?
Personally, it doesn't really bother me in a way, because if they're willing to judge me that early on, they don't need to be in my life.
Okay.
And that would have to be the same with my family. Like, they are like how I grew up. My mom was she would misjudge me a lot with like sports.
Okay.
So I grew up on that. So now it just doesn't really bother me.
Okay. So how has that sort of aspect of sort of your family dynamics growing up, always misjudging you for your sports and everything, how has that sort of shaped how you handle being misjudged today?
Back then, I was more of like a people pleaser because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always try to make sure I was on everyone's like good side. Like, they always thought I was like the nice person. But now, growing up, learning from my past, from my mom, today I kind of just like take it when I will confront them if it gets to the point where they're not very nice about it. I'd be like, you really don't know who I am. I just haven't opened up to you yet. Right. So I'm very confrontational. We'll let them know. And it does.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
It doesn't really like bother me.
Okay. And today, do you still live with your parents at all, or?
I do not.
You do not.
I live with roommates.
Oh, you live with roommates. Okay, perfect. So, do you think sort of getting out of that sort of environment has helped you help you handle more of those brief negative interactions today?
Yes. That is exactly why I moved out of my parents' house, is because I was surrounded by all that negativity. Mm-hmm. I couldn't really take it anymore, and it was just making me lose who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So once I moved out, I kind of just focused on myself. Like, here and there, people would misjudge me. and I would take it personal. Like, I'd get sad about it. Like, I was in a long-term relationship, and I was misjudged by him. I would misjudge him just because of how my parents treated me.
Mm-hmm.
So, living on my own now for 2 years, I think it's been 3 years, I've really known that they can take what they want. It's kind of just a reflection of them as themselves.
Okay.
And not to take it personally.
Okay. So when it comes to flipping the conversation around a little bit, when it comes to you perhaps coming into those instances where you briefly misjudge someone, how do you handle that?
When I briefly misjudge someone, I kind of I try to be able to have a conversation with them, because usually when I misjudge someone, it's more of like, oh, she just glared at me, like, what did I ever do?
Okay.
Like, thinking she's mean. So, like, at the gym, there was that girl. I went up to her and I was just like, oh, hey, like, I tried to get to know her, like, just be like, hey, what's your name? Whatever, I've seen you around before. And I would try and figure out if there was something she had against me in a way.
Okay.
Why she would look at me. But then when you get to know her, she's like laughing. She's asking who the person I am too. And I was just like, wow, I misjudged her just because of her look.
Okay.
And that's very common nowadays for people to do that.
Yes. Okay. Now, that was a good point. You mentioned that usually it sort of stems from just like how they look, and it sounded like it was more of how they talk to you. Do you come across any instances where you perhaps maybe just misjudge someone based on like how they dress at all, or?
No. So I am I don't think the way someone dresses defines them as a person.
Okay.
Like, in a way, this is, I guess, I don't misjudge, but when someone's wearing, like at the gym, a sports bra and shorts, I'm thinking like, oh, they're confident in themselves. Like, they really think highly, like they're proud of their body, the work they're putting in. I guess that could be misjudging in a way.
Okay.
But I don't really focus on what they wear.
Okay.
It's more just like their personalities.
Okay.
But it is very common for people to be like, this guy doesn't know how to keep up with his hair, like he's dirty, he doesn't know how to dress, like
right.
No one will ever date him. Like, people nowadays are really judgmental when it comes to what people wear.
And why do you think that is today?
I would have to say it comes with a lot of insecurity.
Okay.
Why people do that, and people are showing it more. People are allowing it more nowadays.
Okay.
To show their insecurities, and they do that to make themselves feel better when they're misjudging them, like for what they're wearing, how they dress, like how they keep up to date with their hair.
Do you think there's any sort of reflection within that, like for society today? I know among sort of the Gen Z, there is this talk about beauty standards within
Yes.
that sort of generation and everything. How do you think that shapes misjudgment?
Yes. So like keeping up with trends is kind of the same thing, right? Yeah, a lot of people misjudge, like right now I would have to say it's a lot of slicking back the hair.
Okay.
It's supposed to come off as a clean girl aesthetic, but if you don't do that, or like if you constantly do that, people are like, oh, you're dirty, like you don't wash your hair. But in general, it's just like a bunch of gel. People do it every day because they're trying to keep up with trends.
Okay.
Or like with clothes, a lot of like the gym especially, people are there's actually something going on around on TikTok right now saying girls, if they're wearing sports bra shorts, they have no respect for themselves. They're looking for attention. And when girls are wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt, they're insecure because they're not showing anything. So people are just getting misjudged for what they wear. And that's been going around a lot.
Okay.
Or like if you have to go to the bar, like girls will show a little more cleavage, I would say. They're out there for attention. So people are being misjudged nowadays for what they wear. And the same with men. I would have to say the same thing with clothes.
Okay.
Certain clothes, people are coming off like, oh, they're fruity, like, because they know how to dress. That is definitely, I just think if a man knows how to dress, they know how to dress. There's different type of styles, and people need to stop misjudging that.
Okay. And you touched on a good point there, just about in the perspective of women dressing at the gym. It sounds like you're pretty well involved at the gym themselves. And how does that sort of misjudgment about how or what women wear at the gym, how does that sort of tend to make you feel?
I find it very frustrating that people focus so much on what people wear at the gym.
Okay.
Or even outside the gym. It's just at the gym, people I will wear sports bra and shorts because I feel confident when I do that.
Right.
I'm doing it for myself. I'm not doing that for attention. But guys could probably look at me and be like, oh, she's just doing that for attention. I think people should be allowed to wear whatever they want and be able to feel confident how they feel and whatever they're wearing, confident.
In terms of...
And that
go ahead.
comes with guys. Guys take off their shirts at the gym, but they don't get judged how girls get judged.
Right, and so that leads me to my next question. In terms of genders, or I should say in terms of men and women being misjudged, how do you think it's taken or be differently between the two?
Men, I don't see getting judged very often, misjudged. A guy can take off his shirt and it would be totally okay. But if a girl wears a sports bra and shorts at the gym, it's the end of the world. They're seeking for attention. They're insecure. They're dressing it comes to all these things for females.
Right.
But for men, it's okay.
And why do you think it tends to be more okay for men?
Women are just, I would have to say, sexualized more than men are.
Okay. No, that's
it kind of has to deal with just all over the years, with the older generation too.
Okay. And no, that's a good point there. I mean, typically men have been seen to be a little bit more, I guess I don't want to say hierarchical on the chain of gender and everything, but okay. And when it comes to misjudgments, what comes to your mind when you think of the subject of race, and that what's the correlation between misjudgment and race?
Misjudgment and race. Okay. Great example is where my stepdad works. It is full of Mexicans, Somalians, Vietnamese, Chinese, all those races. Well, actually, I have an example of with my race. So a Somalian came up to me, and obviously they have to have full coverage. They're not allowed to show any skin. She has told me all about their traditions, and I know a lot about them now, from talking to them. And I obviously drink. I'm 21, and I told this girl that I drank, and obviously with the religion for Somalians, they are they're not allowed to drink. They obviously can't have sex until marriage. So when she heard I drank, she kind of was just like, she said haram, and that means basically you're going to have, like, how in that language. And then she told me I was a partier, like, I'm a lowlife, I'm not going to succeed just because of that. And that's just because of how hard her religion is. Okay. And with the clothes, so I was wearing a sweatshirt one time, and it was just showing, like, my little neckline, and she was just, like, that, like, not calling me. She kind of told me I was provocative. Okay. That I'm seeking attention in a way, too. Okay. And how did that make you feel? Like, as I said, now I don't really take things very personally. Okay. But, thinking of it too, I was just like, we're two completely different people. We have two different views. I know who I am, and you don't know who I am, but you can think what you want. Okay. Okay. But with race, misjudging does happen a lot just because of different religion views, I would have to say. Okay. No, that's a good point. I like to... Like, Americans, they... all types of religions. So, like, Hispanics, like my family, they're very big on birth control. Like, I would have to say, like, my grandma, she still likes everyone covered. Like, she does not like provocative things. She would mention, she goes, oh, that skirt's short. Like, it's just kind of a religion race thing with misjudging and what they believe. Okay. Now, you yourself, you do have a bit more of you come from a Hispanic background, and you do have a bit more paler skin to yourself, with still brunette hair and everything. How does that play any sort of misjudgments on you yourself? How does that factor in? So my name, obviously Selena, and that is, like, my last name is Balderas, so that sounds Mexican to me. But a lot of people don't, when they see me, and I tell them I'm Mexican, they're all shocked. Okay. So they all think I'm just, like, Caucasian. So I grew up a lot with people just, like, making Mexican jokes to me because I'm white. They would speak Spanish to me. I actually had someone at the gym, they knew I was Mexican, so they purposely spoke in straight Spanish, expecting me to know Spanish. Okay. But I obviously didn't have no idea what they were saying. Like, my head was a blank. My grandparents speak it to us, like, to all the grandkids, and a lot of us don't know Spanish fluently, and we just stare at them with a blank face. Okay. But yeah, I'm paler. I have freckles. I do not look Spanish at all, Mexican at all, so a lot of people are shocked when they tell me that. Like, but I just, like, I always say my name, my full name. Tell me that doesn't sound Spanish.
Well, of course. And yourself, what is it that you do in your day-to-day life?
What I do in the day-to-day life? I am a full-time student. I work almost every day. I'm a server. I make it to the gym 5 times a week. I'm also a runner. I like to I make sure I eat healthy. I like to visit my family a lot. Okay. And hang out with friends a lot. Okay. So when it comes to schoolwork, I know we had touched upon earlier that with school it tends to become a lot more about stereotypes and everything. When it comes to academic work, do you see any misjudgments that happen within academic work? Yes, actually a lot. So I'm in a I'm a business major, so business majors do a lot of group work. So a lot in my class too is like picking groups. Obviously, people are going to go with their friends,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always a few left over, and I would have to say this has a lot to do with race.
Okay.
A lot of race, like, they think, like, let's say they see someone that looks Hispanic or Indian or African American, they're gonna think, like, oh, they're not, like, smart, like, they don't know English. They assume right away that
Mm-hmm.
they can't speak fluently. They're a slow learner. Like, I've learned that with other people saying that in my groups. But in general, they could also be one of the smartest people.
Okay. Okay. So good topic there. I know there is always stigma within academic work, depending on races and everything. When it comes to your experience, how in these sort of situations, how do you sort of tackle that situation?
So in my group, there was this one guy. He does speak English, but it's not very clear. But he actually is the smartest one in our group.
Okay.
And so I always try to talk to people like, oh, we should, like, include them. Like, a lot of people aren't picking them. Like, they can be in our group. I try to fight that little misjudgment of them not knowing and giving them a chance. And a lot of professors, I think, have learned, too, of how students are. So now they get to pick groups,
Mm-hmm.
so this doesn't happen.
Okay. And to sort of gear the similar topic to the workplace, what do you see in terms of workplace and misjudgment there? As you yourself are a server, what sort of misjudgments do you see happen in that sort of style?
As a server, let's see. I would have to say, as no one really knows the restaurant I work at. My restaurant I work at is a higher end.
Okay.
So we have more of, like, the wealthy people that come in because it's expensive. But a lot of people know the owners because it's a smaller town, and they think that us employees get treated very well.
Okay.
Whereas they don't really know what happens behind. And that's the same with being misjudged. Is, you know how as a server you bring out the food, obviously
Right.
You're not making it. The servers are the ones that are getting yelled at for the cook's mistake if they make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're the one that has to get yelled at and take the blame and lose money for that, when in reality it's the cooks that made that mistake.
Okay.
And so then you get told, like, oh, you're an awful server just because the food was bad.
Okay. And where do you think that sort of comes from or stems from?
As for a person, they're gonna yell at the first person they see when they're at a restaurant.
Okay.
So they're gonna see that the server's gonna be standing right there, so they're gonna yell at them and then get a manager. And the manager kind of has to be like, it's not the server's fault, like, the kitchen made a mistake, we can get you a new one. And I would have to say this has a lot to do with high maintenance people too.
Okay.
But that's also me misjudging them, so I guess in a way. I don't know, I guess.
No, that's okay. It sounds like a valid statement. It sounds like that sort of instances start off as reactionary, just because they, as you said, you're there, so they just want almost someone to just blame right away. And you mentioned that it's a little bit of a higher end restaurant. Do you think incomes for the people that dine there tend to reflect those judgments or allow them?
I would have. Will you say that one more time? Sorry.
No, of course. Since you work at a little bit of a higher end restaurant, and usually the people that dine there are a bit more wealthy, do you think income plays a part in how they misjudge you as a server?
I would say not their income, but their age.
Age, okay.
Because I would say older generations, they misjudge a lot earlier because they expect a higher end place to have it perfect every time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make a mistake, they're the ones that are probably going to freak out more.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that too. Like, they've tipped me less because of a problem.
Okay.
So I'd have to say that's more of an age thing,
okay,
not income.
Okay. And to talk more about age, we talked about a little bit of the older generation, a little bit of the younger generation, such as yourself. You're 21. Do you have any interactions with people that are younger than you?
I do. So we have sometimes younger kids. Like, I'm still in my hometown, so I see people that were like 4 years younger than me when I was in high school. They definitely, I would have to say, are the most judgmental.
Okay.
But over the littlest things.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Let's see. I would have to. So right now, it's a trend for 12-year-olds to go to Sephora and get makeup.
Okay.
So they have like the higher end stuff, and then they see us older people getting like the cheap brand, like the e.l.f. and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is why she looks like that." Like, they're just like younger generation is very keeping up with trends, like we talked about earlier. So if you don't keep up with the trends, you're seen as weird, or you're seen as like old. Right.
And how do you think that sort of societal misjudgment there, since they're younger to you now, but if you were at that same age, what do you think your judgments when you were that age would look like?
Well, at that age, I was kind of just in my own little world.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say there was a lot of judging when it came to us. We kind of, I guess we had that with Uggs and stuff. Like, oh, you had Uggs, you were seen as like cool.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that's kind of like a stereotype, I'd say. I was like into sports a lot, so I was always busy, and I didn't really focus on like misjudgment.
Oh, of course.
Whereas nowadays, I think it's more because it's very like technology.
Okay.
So they learn from like influencers and stuff, and what they say and what they think, so then they think the same.
Okay. And okay, we'll go into that point before the next one. When it comes to, you just mentioned technology, influencers, and them sort of little kids reflecting that sort of behavior of influencers. How big of an impact do you think sort of influencers and the higher status people affect society?
For them, how they would affect society is, it's, again, with trends. I would say right now people watch like a lot with like, oh, if they get something, I need to get it, or else I'm not going to be cool. Mm-hmm. see. Influencers, they say one thing, everyone's going to believe it because they are seen with, like, money.
Mm-hmm.
They're famous. They're going to take their word. I guess I don't really... It just depends. Like, the attitudes of influencers have a big impact on the younger generation, and I would say a little bit of my age
mm-hmm.
too. A lot of people like have to keep up with like aesthetics, like earthy people or nice people. Like Alex Earl, as an example, is a very popular person, but she's seen as like dirty because she just goes out a lot. But that's truly not. We really don't know who she is as a person, but
right.
She's one of the most, like, she's like the biggest influencer right now, I would have to say.
Okay.
And she gets misjudged all the time.
Okay. So, that was a good point, how influencers sort of shape how judgments are. They shape these trends. And it sounds like from what you've described from like from younger generations to yourself and what judgments are based on today, would you say it's a good assumption to say that a lot of misjudgments happen about sort of visual aspects, meaning like clothing, sort of status, and how you are present yourself?
Yes, I would say that is 100%
mm-hmm.
the first thing people misjudge about you
mm-hmm.
is your clothing or what you look like.
And it sounds like, just from how I would conclude it, it sounds like the difference between today and perhaps when you were a child and that sort of family dynamic of Hispanic community, it sounds like judgments back then were a lot more lifestyle oriented, no birth control if you don't have those sort of church values. That's how the difference between today and 30 years ago, or 21 years ago, I should say, maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to summarize, misjudgments, where do you think that would look like in perhaps five years?
Misjudgment?
Yes, if we've seen that it's sort of evolved from sort of family dynamics and sort of those a lot more behavioral, societal pressures to more visual and status, what do you think they would look like in maybe 5 years?
I think that it's gonna be sort of the same, and with like clothing, focusing on clothing and your appearance.
Okay.
On misjudgment, and what I would have to say your lifestyle too. With like, if you're active, if you're going to school, a lot of people are going to judge you off of that. And it also just depends on like your age group. So like in high school, let's say you pick to take a gap year, you're going to get judged by that in a way.
How so?
It just really depends on your age. Mm-hmm. Your surroundings too.
Okay. And just one more question. We talked about kids these days with technology. How do you think technology plays a part in misjudgment?
I would have to... It's like social media.
Social media, okay.
That will have a big role on like what you post. Because that's how a lot of people find each other nowadays, is through social media and accounts like that. That's how people are going to judge you, on what you post, what you say on social media. That's definitely, besides the clothing and appearance, technology would have to be the second biggest mm-hmm. thing.
Okay.
And as obviously technology changes over time, it's going to probably have a bigger impact in the next 5 years.
Okay. No, good point. Just to wrap it up briefly, what do you think are some guiding acts or principles or values that help one from stopping to misjudge people?
I always tell myself, you don't know who they are. Don't judge them by what they look like.
Okay.
Or how they act. Someone could be going through something you have no idea about, and that's why they could be acting the way they are. You just have no idea. So you just have to let them be. And it also has to come with what you think about yourself. If you are insecure about yourself, you're going to put it on other people. So you need to focus on yourself, heal on yourself, so then you can view others as better.
Okay. No, good insights. Well, thank you. Just to conclude everything, you've mentioned that misjudgments happen from a lot of different factors, such as looks, the color of your skin, race, your speech dialect, and everything. And it usually comes from your cultural background, familyhood background is something that you mentioned, and how it's changed over the years through age and through generations and technology and everything. So a lot of good points there. Do you have any last insights about the concept of misjudgments at all, or?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's okay. And do you have any questions for me at all?
No.
Okay. Well, Selena, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and answer these questions about misjudgments. But I have everything I need, so if I need anything, I will feel free to follow up with you. But other than that, thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.